Welcome to Insights into Success, where with your host Paul Dodds, we hope to educate, inspire and motivate you to achieve your own personal success. We talk to guests from all around the world from a variety of walks of life to hear the realities of their own journey to success. What challenges have they faced? How have they coped with failure? And what have been the keys or will be the keys to their own success? In our Read to Succeed interviews, we talk books that have inspired our guests, and for some, they share their secrets to marketing success. Join us as we give you insights into success.
All right. Okay, well, welcome to Insights into Success, where today our special guest is Frazer Fearnhead, all the way from Manchester in England. Now, he describes himself, or his wife describes him, as a battle-scarred entrepreneur. He's an author, podcast host, and so much more, I suspect. So looking forward to talking to you, Frazer. Thank you for getting up at a pretty early hour in the UK to accommodate me and talk to me. So welcome on board.
That's great. Very pleased to be here, Paul. How are you doing? You well?
Good. Now, what I like to do, Frazer, is first of all kind of get a bit of context before we sort of get into I guess, some of the meaty stuff about what you're up to. What I like to do is get a bit of context by taking you back and hearing about your upbringing and trying to get a handle, if I can, in terms of what has led you to be where you are now.
Yeah,
and
sure.
So I was wondering if you might be able to share a bit of your story from the early years and what might have propelled you to become the battle-scarred warrior entrepreneur that you are.
Yeah, I suppose if you want to go right back, a lot of the businesses I've had have been property-related businesses, and that kind of stems from my father. I think he was a chartered surveyor and had an estate agency business, and I used to go around as a little boy with a tape measure, helping him measure up properties, because surveyors used tape measures back in those days, not these little laser things they have now. Yeah. I suppose my first entrepreneurial enterprise was when I was about, I think, 13, and an uncle had given me a magic book for Christmas, and I got really into doing magic and tricks, and I started to do children's parties on the weekends, on Saturday afternoons, and I was earning £100 for an afternoon's work when most kids my age were getting like a £5 a week in pocket money. So I really enjoyed that, doing my own business and providing kind of entertainment for kids at the same time. It was a very satisfying job. Now, unfortunately, I think probably one of the early lessons I learned from that was the kind of older kids on the bus going to work used to take the piss out of me doing magic and stuff like that. And I began to think it was really uncool. So although I apologise for this, we're about to get interrupted. I'll try and keep him out of the way. But this is Basil. He's my emotional support cat. I should have locked the door, but anyway. And I gave up doing that and went off to work in a clothes shop or something instead, because I took on board what they were saying. And I think that's very valuable insight, because I still regret that to this day, because I love doing it, but I gave up because of other people's opinions. I think that's really important, that people should stick to their guns and do what they believe is right and not be influenced by anybody else who probably, there's probably an element of jealousy there anyway, looking back on it now. So I learned a valuable lesson from that, but I still impress my nieces with a few card tricks here and there. So
well, that's all good.
Haven't completely given it up. And then I suppose when I left school, there's a very famous nightclub in Manchester called the Hacienda. You probably haven't heard of it all the way over in Australia, but it's very, very well known. People used to come from all over the world to go there. And at the tender age of 18, after leaving school, I hired that for a party. I had DJs, put on a fashion show, sold tickets for it, and that was amazing. I had like 1,200 people there. There were people literally queuing around the block to come into the party. I think I made a profit of about $4,000 in one night doing that. Yeah. Wow. So I thought, this making money business is really easy. I don't need to worry about this again. So I spent that money on I think a Ford XR2, which I then Fiesta XR2, which I then sold, and then traveled around the world for a few years, which was really good, kind of on and off. In between traveling around the world, I ended up going to university and law school as well. I qualified as a lawyer, went to work in the music business in London in the 1990s as a music lawyer. And that was really good fun for a while. But I quickly realized that working for someone else, especially in a kind of even in the music industry, the legal side of it is quite stultifying. You know, you're doing the same sort of documents, management agreements, recording agreements, publishing agreements again and again, and arguing the same points again and again with the same people on the other side. And it just wasn't for me. And I think one day my boss, I've been in a meeting with this young band that I really, really like their music. And I said to Mark, you know, I really love your new album. And after the meeting, the boss calls me aside and goes, Frazer, love isn't a word that lawyers use. And I'm like,
oh, no.
I'm like, okay. And that kind of triggered it, really. I thought, right, this really isn't going to be for me. So I ended up managing that band, left the law a few months later, handed my notice in. And that was back in 2000, the year 2000. And I've worked for myself ever since then, starting companies. Some have gone very well, some haven't. And it's been quite a rocky road, really. So, I mean, I don't know how much you want me to go into about why my wife has decided to call me a battle-scarred entrepreneur, but suffice to say, it's been a bit of a roller coaster.
Yeah, look, and it's, I like to talk about that because I think too often in the media we hear all the glamorous stories, we hear all the great results, but we don't hear about a lot of the things that have happened behind the scenes. And you know, in my experience in talking to a lot of people, you know, so much of what happens is as a result of going through a lot of challenges. That, you know, it's not often that people are very successful without having actually gone through a lot. But of course, in the media, we don't hear about all those challenges. We only hear the good parts. But for you, I guess the first question is, you know, when did you learn the most? Did you learn the most in those businesses that went well, or the ones that, you know, didn't go so well? Where was your greatest learnings?
I think you always learn more by things going wrong. I mean, I listened to a fascinating interview with Lisa Blakely, the woman who started Spanx and became the first female billionaire, self-made female billionaire. And she said, you know, she literally failed her way to success. And her father used to regard failure as a great thing to happen because you learn by it. And I think that's definitely true for me. I mean, the next big lesson, I suppose, was I started managing this band. I developed the kind of artist management side into event management. Had a lot of blue chip clients. Like, I think the first party I did for corporate clients, I completely blagged it and pretended I was a lot more established than I was. It was like a £500,000 party for Sky TV. So, and that was a good lesson as well. I mean, I was scrabbling around trying to get business from all sorts of places. And when I discovered it was just as easy to get a £500,000 party as it was to get a £25,000 party from someone smaller. So why not dream big and aim big? Because it's just the same amount of work for a much bigger reward. And that business went really well. I mean, within a kind of the first year, the turnover was getting up to kind of the £1 million mark. And then the following year was 2001. And it was going really well. And I had like almost £1 million worth of forward Christmas bookings booked in the calendar. And then, you know, I'm not saying this is a tragedy for me, but then 9/11 happened. And a lot of my clients were banks and big advertising companies with clients in America. And literally every time I picked up the phone for that kind of first half of September, it was people cancelling their Christmas party, and the whole business just collapsed at that point. I mean, luckily I didn't have high overhead, so, you know, I carried it on. Yeah. It really took the impetus out of it a lot. What I realized in that business is, I mean, someone actually was tracking me and they wanted to buy the business. And what I realized was there was really nothing to sell. All I'd done is create a job for myself. I was the one going out getting clients. I had freelancers working for me to help organize the events. There weren't any systems in place. There weren't any processes in place. And really, I just created a job for myself. So yeah, that was the first lesson. I decided that, you know, anything I did from then on, I needed to create a proper company with systems and processes and something that could be sold. So I did that with the next company I built, which was a property company. It was, and I said I'd always had an interest in property, and I got into buying buy-to-let properties myself. And at the time, there weren't companies really out there teaching other people how to do that. Now there's a plethora of them, but at the time there were only one or two. So I started a kind of online property investment consultancy called Armchair Property Investor. That went very, very well. We sold about £60 million worth of property online to property investors, and sold that company 2 years after starting it for £2.25 million. So that went really well. Unfortunately, then
Can I just ask a question there just before you go on? So you sold it after just 2 years. What was the motivation for that? Was it because you felt the market had peaked, or you kind of like doing different things and you were bored and time to move on?
So started it in 2005, and so this was 2007. And I did note that it was, I mean, I was going to stay on as MD of the company and carry on working for it within a larger umbrella organization. I did feel it was getting more hard work. It was getting harder for people, our clients, to find mortgages. And I thought the financial kind of support there to be able to get to would actually help expand the business. And I kept shares in the larger company.
Yeah.
So I thought, partly because I needed the financial support for it to get bigger, and partly because, it was a good opportunity. But then obviously in 2008, the financial crash happened, and property was particularly badly affected. And so that £2.25 million that I mean, you hear people say, "Oh, I got millions of pounds for this company." Often what they mean is, I got shares in the company that bought me that are worth that amount. So I got some of that in cash, but most of it was in shares in the parent company. So when the financial crash happened in 2008, those shares suddenly weren't worth £2.25 million anymore. They were worth a few £100,000. And so that really, I went through, kind of lost my job there because the whole company folded because of the financial crash. 2 years after that, I was probably 18 months after that, because I had very high overheads. I was literally unable to pay my electricity bills, having to borrow money off my mother. So I had no income and very high overheads. And that was a very tough time. I mean, my wife was particularly badly affected by it. But we struggled through. That was another. I'm not quite sure what lesson I got out of that, other than it was a complete disaster. But
I mean, you've had a couple of bad, timing issues, haven't you? Really, that are out of your control. I mean, you could have controlled the 9/11 and then the market crash as well. I mean, that was outside of anything that you could influence.
No, I'll wait to hear what happened with COVID.
Oh, okay. I'm waiting to hear that one.
Well, in between that and me starting the next company, I sort of had I basically helped a friend. I lent him I think it was £10,000. I came up with an idea for us to start a company, which I wasn't particularly interested in, but we started it anyway. It was like a property video company that did video inventories for landlords and film properties for estate agents. And I created all the systems and processes that I'd learned how to do, created operating manuals, sold that opportunity to 42 franchisees. The business went really well. And then the person I started the business with and lent the money to decided to get together, went behind my back, got the 4 or 5 best franchisees and started their own organization, kind of literally overnight. Woke up one morning, couldn't get hold of anyone. None of them would answer their phone, and basically completely stabbed me in the back, and refused to repay the money I'd lent him. So I managed to sell that company off for a kind of, I don't know what it was, 20 or 30 grand, something like that. Not very much, but I was never interested in the first place. So by this time, I'd sort of got back into property, and I cast my mind back to 2007, thinking how difficult it was for people to get mortgages. And at the time, there were companies like Zopa, Funding Circle, Kickstarter coming to the forefront. And I thought, well, if they can crowdfund companies and things like that, there's got to be a way to crowdfund property investment and cut out the banks and let everybody invest together and share together.
Yeah.
And I was told by a succession of lawyers that no, it was illegal. I'd be thrown in prison if I tried it because it was against the Financial Markets and Services Act.
Yeah.
But I persisted. I used my legal background. I looked into the legislation myself, and I did find there were some exceptions you could work within.
Yeah.
And I approached a firm of solicitors. I told them this and said, look, can we do something like this? And that finally, after 6 months, found a firm of solicitors who said, yeah, we can operate without this, without needing to be regulated. So I started a company in 2012 called the House Crowd. It was the world's first property crowdfunding company. It's that kind of industry has since exploded since then, and perhaps retracted since that. So that went very, very well. It scaled that company. I mean, we raised money at various points. The last valuation was in 2019. It was valued at pre-money at £29 million, and we raised money on that valuation. I still owned a third of that company, so things were going pretty well. Although the industry itself had got very, very regulated over that time, and we'd been forced to change from a kind of crowdfunding model to a more of a lending model, which, to be honest, I was never happy with. It made sense to scale the company because we couldn't carry what we had to do, because we couldn't carry on operating on the crowdfunding basis because it just wasn't scalable. But we'd, in essence, become glorified money lenders, and that just didn't sit well with me. So we were 2019, everything was going pretty well. We'd started our own development company as well. Our development company was building about £60 million worth of property around the Manchester area.
Wow.
And we lent a lot of money out, but then the company needed professionalizing. So I brought in some very expensive people to help run that business and take the day-to-day running away from me, because I didn't like it. I wanted out of that business for a couple of years, to be honest.
Yeah.
They thought, let's bring them in, professionalize them. They were also going to raise institutional money as well. We were on the cusp of getting about £100 million worth per year of institutional money, and everything was going really well. And then COVID happened. So what happened when COVID happened was there was a moratorium on people repaying debts. There was a massive breakdown of developments. We couldn't carry on with any of the developments. So all our developments were racking up interest with the crowdfunding side of the business. Was hemorrhaging cash on these very expensive people I'd brought in and all the other consultants they'd brought in. What else? Well, the FCA clamped down on companies because they were worried about their viability. So they stopped us trading completely on any new projects for 6 or 7 months. So it was like this perfect storm of events where all our expenses massively increased, and we literally couldn't, cash flow stopped completely.
Wow.
So after struggling along for kind of 9 or 10 months in that situation, me and my CFO came up with a plan to basically cut back to a skeleton staff and survive for the next couple of years on a skeleton budget till things had recovered. Unfortunately, some of these consultants I brought in didn't take kindly to the fact they were going to be sacked, and I was warned at the time about them, but didn't really believe they could do anything. But they did. They again pretty much betrayed me. Went behind they did actually go behind my back, and persuaded the board that the company wasn't viable and best thing to do was put it into administration. And to be honest, I was so pissed off by this stage. I just been struggling for 10 months with a company I didn't even want to be involved with anymore to keep it alive. And I literally just gave up and said, fine. So it unfortunately went into administration in February 2021. And it's just, you know what? I'm still kind of struggling back from that. To be honest, it was something I built up over eight years. Really hadn't had a proper holiday in 8 years. To see that collapse, it didn't really affect me so much at the time because I think I was in so much shock. But it's a massive knock to my confidence. Really, my wife worked in the company as well, and to her as well. So that was probably the toughest thing of all, really, especially because at the end of the day, I feel like we let a lot of people down: investors, shareholders, staff. I mean, Christ, all the staff were suddenly out of a job, which was awful. So, that was really, really tough.
Yeah, so I can understand now why you refer to, or your wife refers to, as a metal-scarred entrepreneur.
But, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, they say.
Yeah. So tell me about that, though. Like, how have you coped? Because the thing is, the stress levels can go through the roof when everything's going awry, like you've had on a number of occasions. How have you coped with it?
I'm ashamed to say vodka. I mean, you know, the local off license around here did very well during that period. You know, I think everyone needs a crutch to some degree, and unfortunately, I do tend to resort to drinking. I'm battling not doing that as well. It is difficult. I mean, I suppose I've done a lot of personal development work, which has helped. I meditate. I try and do gratitude practices every day, which really does have a very beneficial effect on your state of mind. And that, I mean, I started training with Bob Proctor. Do you know who Bob Proctor is?
Yes, I do. Yeah,
So,
I haven't done any of his courses of that, but I've certainly watched a bit of his stuff on YouTube and that.
I came across Bob, I don't know, decades ago, really, when I first started doing my own businesses, and along with lots of other people like Jim Rohn, Brian Tracy, Tony Robbins, people like that. So I'd always been aware of him, but I started getting, I joined his mentorship group probably a few years ago, before the last company collapsed, and so that really helped. And I think I decided before House Crowd collapsed that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to help other entrepreneurs rather than be running a company employing 26 people and waking up to a mountain of problems every day. And so I kind of, in my head, I'd made the switch. I said, no, I want to help other people. I want to wake up in the morning feeling excited and good about myself, not, oh my God, what crap am I going to have to deal with today that I couldn't actually do anything about. The buck stopped with me as CEO, but I couldn't actually resolve these problems in most of the cases. So that helped me to cope a lot, really. I think without doing that personal development work on myself, it could have been really bad. Whereas kind of like, you know, sporadically drinking a load of vodka when I've had a particularly bad day, it might have just been a complete downward spiral. But I always pick myself back up and try to do my routine, go for a walk in the morning, listen to inspirational podcasts, do my meditation, do gratitude practice. And all those things combined, it did help me get through the stress barrage. But like everybody, I'm not perfect. I fell off the wagon a few times.
So tell me about your meditation. How often do you do it, and for how long?
It tends to be for 20 minutes or half an hour in the morning, and often I'll do another 20 minutes at lunchtime, though my wife calls that, you mean you're going for a nap? I do have a tendency to fall asleep. On the particular one I do, the lunchtime one is a relaxation one. I do tend to doze off for 10 minutes or so. But yeah,
well, obviously work, you're relaxed.
Yeah, it does. And I do different ones. I use kind of the semi-guided meditations on Headspace. I find those quite good. I also sometimes do sleep ones as well with a guy called Brian Scott, who has a podcast called The Reality Revolution. I really think his podcasts are great, very, very powerful kind of guided meditations.
Right. So I was going to say, so you typically do guided meditations. You don't do anything on your own.
Occasionally, but I like the kind of guidance just to bring me back to my breathing. You know, when your mind starts to wander. I just like the occasional, you know, reminder that I need to be focusing on the breathing and not going off on my own tangential thoughts.
And so for you, like, how much has like mindset played a part in, you know, both being successful and managing the challenging times? And by that I mean, like, are you one of these people that is aware of your thoughts and staying in the moment and controlling your thoughts? Is that something you've worked on over the years?
Yeah, absolutely. And by no means perfect at it. I mean, it's a lifelong process to carry on doing that and getting better and better. But I'm certainly a lot more aware now. I can most times kind of realize how I'm reacting to something, take a deep breath, take a step back from it and not react. I mean, for instance, technology. I mean, lots of people have a problem get very frustrated with technology. And I certainly do. And I recognize I just had this pattern where wherever I started to feel frustrated with technology, something not working as I wanted it to, I just completely overreact and it's like want to throw my laptop out the window or something. And I've recognized that's just a pattern that I have a choice how I react to it. And I'll say I'm not perfect, but it's certainly a lot better than it is. And certainly my relationships with other people, I can spot when people are being really negative now, or I can tell them, I can say to myself, it's just words. They're only saying words. I don't have to get angry about it. I can choose not to, and just not let them affect my mood. But it's an ongoing process. It's not easy to do that.
No. And what about the law of attraction? Is that something? Do you sort of participate in that? Is that something that's a thing for you? What's your thoughts on it?
I think there's a lot of nonsense surrounding it. I mean, in essence, I think it works from a scientific perspective. But I mean, I've learned about law of attraction from two people, mainly Bob Proctor, but also a guy called Aaron Apke who has a great podcast. And Bob always used to say that the law of attraction is a secondary law. It's secondary to the law of vibration. So fundamentally, you put yourself in the right vibrational frequency to attract things to you on the same frequency. And I can fully get behind that. The kind of younger generation who think they can sit around on the sofa trying to manifest their big mansion in their Ferrari without actually doing anything. No, I don't believe that's going to happen for them. I think the law of attraction works because you're putting yourself in the right state of mind. You're positive. You leave others with the impression of increase. You feel good about yourself. You feel grateful for things that are around you. And as a result of that, you attract more to you. But it's only because you're focused on those things. It's like the old thing. If you go out, you're looking to buy a new car. You suddenly start seeing those sorts of cars. If you want to buy a new Porsche, for example, you'll suddenly start seeing Porsches everywhere because your mind is focused on them.
Yeah.
So, I believe that there is a thing called the law of attraction, and you attract to you what you're focused on and the right vibrational frequency. But you also have to take the appropriate action if you want to attract those things into your life.
So do you think that you got onto the wrong vibration several times, which has resulted in what's happened for you and your businesses?
Absolutely. In one way or another, I attracted all those things to me. And let's face it, the same pattern has repeated itself again and again in one form or another, trusting the wrong people, being a bit probably a bit cavalier about things in some cases, not paying enough attention to things, letting things slip as being the cause. I mean, okay, fine, there've been major events like 9/11, the financial crash, COVID, but I can't deny that I'm partly responsible, at least, or I have attracted the same sorts of people into my life time and time again, and the same sorts of things have happened in the same way that some people continually attract abusive partners to themselves. Same thing, really. So
I'm just wondering, you've said several times that you've been in situations where you actually didn't want to be there, but you just went along with it anyway, with that franchise business and then with what they were doing with that property business more recently. So I'm just wondering from that, though, is there a lesson in that to listen more to your gut? And if you're not fully committed, to get out?
That's exactly right. And that is the lesson that I learned from the whole house crowd experience is I was not aligned to that business anymore. When I started it, absolutely, I had a real passion for it, really believed in what we were trying to do. But once that changed, I just realized it wasn't what I wanted to be doing, and I would have got out sooner. Part of the reason I was so unhappy is I felt trapped. We had 700 or 800 investors in the company. We were looking after, I think it was around 130 million pounds worth of clients' money, and I had obligations. I couldn't just walk out. But I realized I was no longer in alignment with it, and the only thing, however much my shares were notionally worth, I didn't want to do it anymore. So I did recognize that. I just had to try and get out of it in a sensible way, so I didn't let people down. That's what I tried to do. Ultimately, it didn't work. But one thing I always say to people, it shouldn't be about the money. If you're just starting a business, like I did with the video company, just for someone else's sake or to make money, you're never going to be happy doing that, and things will go wrong, I think, because you're not fully committed to it. So yeah, you're completely right, and that's why I am doing the business coaching now, because I really believe in trying to help other people. It gives me a real sense of achievement doing that, and the money really is, it's fine, but it's a secondary thing to that, and I feel much better about doing what I'm doing.
So with your business coaching, right, when you're talking to prospective clients, is it something that you would would you highlight it, or would you downplay it, or even not even talk about it in so far as the difficulties that you've had, the things that have gone wrong for you, gone awry for you? How do you see that when you're pitching to get new clients?
Well, I think essentially it's the focus is on them. It's not on me. I mean, as long as they realize I've had the experience behind me, what has gone right or wrong is, if they ask me, I'll tell them. I mean, I had a call with someone just a few days ago, and he did ask me about my background, and I'm quite happy to talk about it, not perhaps in as much detail as we have today.
Yeah.
But I make it very clear that, I've had some successes and I've had some things go badly wrong. And I can bring the kind of experience I've had with those to help them. So I think it's a good thing. But fundamentally, my coaching centers around Bob Proctor's program called Thinking into Results, which is all about your mindset and, change your thoughts, change your life, and to get the right mindset to be able to scale your business up, and focusing on that really. So my experience is, it's a bonus really. It's not really relevant to the program that I mentor people through.
Right. I mean, the thing that strikes me though is that, I think first, if I was to engage with someone who had your sort of experience, if they were open about it, then for me, firstly, it's credibility, as in this person's real. Because if they've not indicated they have ever had anything go awry, I'd be kind of like, well, it's hard to believe.
It'd be hard for me to hide as well.
Yeah. And then the next thing though too is, when you've been through things like that, surely you're then able to see the warning signs for others, having experienced it yourself, and impart your wisdom on them and say, hey, listen, look, I've been in a similar situation to you, and this is what happened to me, and I wouldn't want that to happen to you. So maybe have you thought about this sort of thing? So
no, absolutely. I mean, there are kind of a few hundred Proctor Gallagher Institute consultants around the world. Lots of them doing very, very well. In fact, one lady from Belfast was a nurse before she got into this, and she's their most successful consultant. She makes millions and millions of dollars a year, but she had no business experience. So I figure, I'm doing the same program as her. I have all my business experience as well, so I can bring that to the table. In fact, the kind of up-level programs I do are more business mastermind type groups, where I do bring my business experience into things a lot more. But the basic program is essentially all around the Thinking into Results program. But yeah, certainly I do laser sessions as well with people. So that's again where my business experience can come in if they have a specific business problem.
Right. So tell me a little bit more about the program, the Bob Proctor program that you're implementing. So did you have to go and do a course or something and then get qualified?
Yeah, essentially. It took about 6. You didn't have to go and do the course. You did it online and submitted kind of tests, I suppose, to show that you've understood it and you could relate it to other people. So it's essentially, it's the curriculum is 12 video modules that's delivered by Bob, who sadly passed away this year, as you probably know. So it's video modules delivered by him. You've got workbook, exercises, reading material, and it's a 6-month program, and I mentor people through it online in group coaching sessions and in one-to-one laser coaching sessions. So it's very, very powerful. It starts delivering results pretty quickly. It's a lot about strategic repetition, and it gives you a methodology that you can use, yes, in your business, but you can take it, you have the videos for life, and then you can implement it in all sorts of areas of your business and life rather. I mean, it's helped me not only kind of, I mean, ironically, I started doing this the program and setting myself goals and everything. And I set myself a goal in August. I look back at it, I only found it the other day. I'd set myself a goal in August 2020 to be out of my company in 6 months' time. And almost to the day, that's what's happened. But it wasn't quite in the way I envisaged it. Not in the way I envisaged it, but it just shows you when you say you need to be very, very specific when you make your goals.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And that was, I got goosebumps when I realized that is actually exactly what had happened. I got out of my company 6 months, and that was the goal I'd set, but not in the same way. So yeah, but it's also, it's massively improved my communication and my relationship with my wife. So did have some issues there in terms of communication. She grew up in New Zealand. She went to Wellington University. She lived there, and I don't know what it is. She runs the words together a lot of the time. I had difficulty communicating with her or understanding what she said a lot of the time, and I've learned to kind of not, again, get so frustrated with her and be more patient and just communicate better with her. So it's helped in that sort of sphere.
So how are you managing? Sorry to interrupt, but I've got to ask this. How are you managing for me? Because I know you said I was Australian before, but I'm actually New Zealander.
No. I didn't say you were Australian, did I? I knew you were from
You did in the beginning, but that's okay. We'll forgive you. I thought I'll give them a
apologise. Mea culpa. No, I knew you from New Zealand. That's no, I knew that. No, absolutely fine. She just has a slight tendency to mumble, which makes it difficult. It's more that than her accent. She doesn't have a Kiwi accent, really, only on certain words.
Right.
So anyway, sorry.
So she's been in the UK for a long time now.
Well, we've been married for 18 years this year. So, and she was here for 4 or 5 years before that. So she's been back a while now.
Right. Okay. Well, she lost the accent.
She was actually born in Liverpool and then was one of the £10 Poms that moved over to New Zealand in the 70s.
Oh wow! Okay, so a bit of a homecoming, coming back and marrying someone from Manchester.
Sort of, yeah.
So, how have you found now doing what you're doing? Like, how are you in yourself now that you're doing what you're doing, as opposed to, okay, you're running a big property business. But what are you feeling more fulfilled now? I mean, how do you feel?
If I'm being perfectly honest, finding clients is a lot harder than I thought it would be. And that's partly because I'm still involved in the property development side of things, because the developments were so delayed, there's 3 or 4 of them that are still going on. So we've still probably got, I don't know, 40 or 50 properties we're building that and very close to completion and being sold. So I've been distracted by that. So I'm still building the business up. I only acquire kind of a couple of clients a month at the moment, which isn't ideal. It needs to be a bit more than that. But it's good. I mean, my personal goals now aren't to kind of go out and build a company and earn loads of money. We're planning to move to Mallorca very shortly. My goal is to have a kind of traditional Mallorcan finca farmhouse in the middle of the country, a bit of land, a couple of donkeys, some chickens, and be able to run my business nicely just over the internet, working 2 or 3 days a week. That's kind of my goal. So, I'm pretty happy that I'm progressing towards that in the right sort of way. It's going a bit slower than I would like, but I'm naturally impatient. So that's one of the things I'm working on.
Well, you're not the only one in that department. I think a lot of people would be guilty of that.
Yeah, probably.
So for you though, looking back, what would be some of your biggest lessons from what's happened?
I think one of the reasons I wanted to get into the Bob Proctor stuff was I really realized that mindset is everything, and it's the way it's not necessarily what you do. There are all sorts of businesses that can be successful in all sorts of areas. It's the way you do things. I think one of the things I was proudest about with the house crowd was the company culture I created. People really loved working there. Certainly our original clients loved doing business with us. They're what I think Spencer Blanchard would call raving fans. I think it was him who wrote that book. We got a lot of business by recommendation and word of mouth. So, but really providing value for people and going the extra mile, whether that's staff or customers, is a key to building business. just having the right mindset to treat people properly, do things in the right way, be very focused on what you're doing. I certainly implemented that lesson a lot in my last business and got a lot done by blocking off time in my calendar, not allowing myself to be interrupted. I just think the modern world, people are just, they're pulled so many different directions all the time. And it's just terrible. You go out for a meeting with somebody or even on social occasion, and people are constantly on their phone and stuff, as we all know. Just spend time with the people you're with. And I think that's a really important lesson, is whatever you're doing, focus on that. And, I don't have any notifications on my phone or computer for anything. I check emails. If I say I only did it twice a day, that'd be a lie. But I try and just keep it to maybe 2 or 3 half-hour segments in a day where I check emails. I'm not a big fan of social media. I think it's got its positives, but it's also very, very negative. Especially if you're maybe not as confident as you perhaps should be, and you see all these other people, and they're either claiming to be running 7-figure businesses or hanging out on yachts the whole time and stuff. And it can make, even though I know it's false, and I'm generally a pretty confident person, it still has a negative effect. And I think it must have a detrimental effect on a lot of people, because it's like that echo chamber that just goes round and round. So keep off social media, stop getting yourself distracted, focus on what you're doing, and focus on giving value. Don't focus on making money. Focus on following what you want to do, believe in yourself, and provide value for people, and the money will follow, is what I've learned.
And because one of the questions I always ask, but and you kind of feel like you've already answered it to a large extent, is what are the keys for success?
Well, those things. I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine who's very, very successful. Not quite sure how much, but he's got very nice houses in various parts of the world, and is tax resident in Switzerland, which kind of says it all. And he basically said, what I just said, focus on, if you want to be successful in business, think about what you can do. Always go the extra mile for your clients and customers, and deliver great value. And that's probably the key to building a successful business. Provide more than what people expect you to provide. So
with your friends, okay, how do you think he lines up to you in terms of his experience? From what you're saying, and I hope I don't want it to cause offense, but it sounds like he's been more successful. If you define success as financial, which is only one measure of success, it sounds like he's, at this point in time, more successful than you. So looking at that, though, why do you think that's happened for him? Why do you think he is financially, and I want to stress that's not the only measure, but we're talking financial in this circumstance. Why do you think he succeeded more than you?
So the person I'm talking about, and I went to a very academic school. Everyone from our school went, half the year went to Oxford or Cambridge. It was probably the most academic school in the country, but alongside Eton and Harrow. He didn't go there. He's not stupid, but he basically went into a network marketing business very early on in his life, and he stuck with it. I have asked him this question. He said he created a great team of people around him, and he really worked hard. He went the extra mile to train them and get them motivated. And out of all the people he took on, there were probably a core of maybe 8 or 10 people who were really great guys. And he did training with them. He did training with the people they brought onto the network marketing business. And he focused on building that business. And eventually he bought the license for that business for the UK. Then he got it for Italy. I think he got it for Germany as well. And there's no doubt he's a very, very astute guy. But I think he focused on that one business and built it up. And eventually it was an international kind of network marketing business for health products. And he stayed with that business. And eventually the main company bought him out of his licenses for what I imagine was, north of 30 million quid, I would imagine.
Yeah.
So I think what he did, he provided value. He went the extra mile. He really focused on one thing, which I have a tendency not to do. I love starting things and getting them off the ground. That's me. That's my personality, and that's probably one of the patterns that has repeated itself. I'm your typical serial entrepreneur. I love coming up with ideas. I love getting them off the ground. Once it gets to a certain level, I kind of lose interest, because it's not about making the money for me. It's about being creative, I suppose, in a way.
Yeah, I totally relate. I mean, I'm a sort of person, I love learning, and I'm confident that I can pick anything up and learn it quickly. The problem is I get bored. I'll be doing something, I'll master something, then it's like, okay, what do I do next? So whereas other people, like you said, might just really dig deep and obtain a high level or an in-depth level of knowledge in a particular area, I'm kind of more Mr. I know a bit about a lot, because I'll learn quite a bit about something and be like, okay, what's the next thing to learn?
Yeah.
So I totally get where you're coming from. I think I'm much the same in that regard.
There's just so much to do, and I think, that's a great idea. And I don't have any fear. I think I can do anything, and I believe I can. So, I had no fear about starting a business. The only time I've had a real panic attack, I suppose, was one day when I'd left my job as a pretty well paid lawyer, started this company with no money, no guaranteed income, just a belief I could do it. And I did. So, I always think, that's great. I'd love to do that. That looks really interesting. So, unfortunately, if you don't focus on something, if I'd stayed as a lawyer, God, probably be a partner. I would have been a partner in the firm years ago. I'd be earning a 7-figure salary or whatever equity in the company by now. But do I regret it? No, I've never regretted it, because that's not what I wanted to do in my life. And there are other things that are more important. Yeah,
it's not you. The other thing too, and I don't know to what extent it's true, but I've always kind of wondered, like, New Zealand, the richest man in New Zealand left school at age 15 and ended up as a tow truck driver. And anyway, he ended up actually doing an MBA at Harvard, years later, and obviously became hugely successful. But I always kind of thought, though, that the thing is, though, that people like him, and possibly like your friend, they leave school maybe early. They don't go to university in that. So in economic terms, their opportunity cost is really low. Like, they've got nothing to lose. Like, no one's expecting them to do much. They're not highly educated. They're not going to walk into a high-paying job. So there's not a lot of barriers to just having a crack. Whereas if you go to university, get yourself a good degree, then you can walk into a fairly reasonable job and have a fairly good base salary. So to give that up is a lot more than if you're the guy that's just left school early and is facing maybe working in a manufacturing plant or something if they're not careful. You know what I mean? So I've always wondered to what extent that actually gives them, in some respect, maybe an advantage, because they've got nothing to lose. So just have a crack.
It is a double-edged sword. I mean, people could look at maybe, you or me and say, you've had it easy. You had parents who paid for your education. You went to university and stuff. But you have to play with the cards you dealt. It is in some ways a disadvantage, because you do have something to lose by giving it up. And you also have that safety blanket to some extent that you can fall back on. So are you as motivated and driven as someone who's just pulled themselves up by the bootstraps and maybe started as a market trader or doing something like that, who has got nothing to lose? So, no, I don't think anyone has it easy. They always say people who are credited as being an overnight success spent years getting to the point where they became an overnight success. And that's true of everyone. Look, we only ever see the surface of other people's lives. We all have struggles. We all have difficulties. My wife looks at people like my friend I'm talking about, or other friends I've got who are pretty successful. And, she thinks, oh God, what, how come everything, how can we have it so difficult and stuff? I'm thinking, most people look at me and think I've got it easy and live this. We live in a nice house in a nice area. We've got lovely cars. We go on holiday several times a year. People think we've got it easy. They don't see that we're struggling, and we don't see that other people are struggling as well. Everyone presents their best face most of the time. I tend to wear my heart on my sleeve, and I don't have a problem really talking about struggles. Get a bit emotional about it at times, I guess, but I don't really have anything to hide, because I just think, well, I've always done my best. I'm honest. I always deal with people with integrity. So things have gone wrong. Things have gone wrong, and I've learned by them. But yeah, I think everyone has their struggles under the surface.
So it sounds to me like you're pretty good at this, but yeah, I mean, have you managed to really just sort of accept things as they are and look forward and not look back, or do you have a tendency at times to kind of like reflect and have that sense of frustration and guilt over decisions that you made and the consequences in your past?
Because of the personal development work I've done, it's much more the former. I can accept it and move forward in a way I would not have been able to do maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I have my days where I want to revenge on people, certain people, and do feel dreadful about what's happened. But that's very, very minor to what it would have been 5 years ago, because I follow a guy called Peter Crone, who is just really, really influenced the way I think about things. And he says, things happened because there was no other way they could have happened. And one of his other little phrases is, life is the friction that polishes the gem you already are. And all these hardships you have in your life help you grow as a person. And so, you have to accept them and move on. They've happened, and you can either let them control you, or you control them. There's nothing you can do about it. You either have to accept them and move on, or let them control the rest of your life and ruin the rest of your life. So, no, I think by and large, thanks to the work I've done through Bob Proctor and what have you, not 100%. I'm going to be honest. It's not, as I said, it's a lifelong task to work on your personal growth. But by and large, I kind of accept what's happened, and I don't let it affect me moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I've read a book by Deepak Chopra, and one of the things he said in that book was, you just need to accept everything is as it's meant to be. And I've had a tendency in the past, to reflect on things, and for various reasons, holding on to the past, and somehow feeling like there's security in things not changing. And I put that part possibly down to, as a kid, my father was a teacher, and various things happened, and we ended up shifting around quite a lot. So I think that possibly that might have influenced my sort of desire for things not to change, that stability. But I came to realize that it's really a hamstring for me. This thing of wanting things not to change, and also when things go awry, living in the past and sort of ruminating over all those things. So for me, I actually found like reading that was actually quite uplifting, really, and just sort of released me. I'm like, well, if I just accept it is what it is, I can't change it, is what it is, so just accept it, get over it, and move on. I actually found that really good. And then the other thing, it was this whole thing of, I need to change, and instead of thinking of things not changing to somehow feel safe, that's actually not safe. That's the most dangerous thing, is just to stay still. You have to keep changing. You have to keep evolving.
You've got no choice in the matter. You've got no choice in the matter.
Not to.
As Peter Crone says, nothing. The only thing that's certain in life is uncertainty. Life is uncertain. You never know what's going to happen. I don't remember where I heard this, but your life is basically like an hourglass where the sand is draining out, but the trouble is the top half is hidden, so you don't know how much sand you've got left. So just make use of all the time you've got, and once it's passed into the lower half, it's gone. Can't do anything about it. Just focus on what you've got left, because you don't know when that's going to run out.
So for me, like, what I'm trying to do is actually every day wake up with excitement, thinking, well, I actually don't know what's going to happen today, and that's actually really good.
Embrace it. Embrace it.
Yeah. Whereas in the past, I'd be like, oh God, I hope nothing terrible happens today.
But that's the attitude some people perhaps wake up with. I hope nothing interesting or challenging happens today. Whereas if you can just accept that everything's uncertain and everything's a learning experience, it puts you in the right frame of mind to deal with the day.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, just because there's uncertainty doesn't mean it's bad uncertainty. Like someone amazing could be just about to walk into your life and introduce you to something that's going to be transformational. So
Yeah,
it definitely
absolutely.
doesn't have to be bad.
I think that's another valuable lesson I've learned, that, I really try and see the good in everything. That you don't, there's the old Buddhist story about, you never know what's good or bad, or as Shakespeare said, there's nothing good nor bad, that thinking doesn't make it so. You're just attaching meaning to events.
Yeah.
You don't know that event is bad. It may not seem like it's a great thing to happen at that time, but you don't know what it's going to lead to further down the line. So just look for the good in it and accept it, as you said, that it is what it is. There's nothing you can do about it, and look for the good in everything to try and maintain a positive frame of mind.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, in your profile, I see that you refer to yourself as an author. So tell me about that.
Okay. Well, I've written 2 books. The first one was a friend and I. We love the same authors. People like, well, I like lots of different types of authors, but particularly people like Harlan Coben, Robert Cray, John Connolly. People who write kind of detective novels, and they're always set in New York or Los Angeles. And we thought, there's no one really writing that sort of semi-humorous thriller type novel where we live in Manchester. We decided we were out drunk one night in a bar and said we were going to write the great Manchester novel. And so we spent about 3 years in kind of various evenings and weekends sporadically writing this novel, arguing a hell of a lot in the best way possible. We just had an absolute scream writing it. It was brilliant. It took us about 3 years. We didn't bother looking for a publisher, weren't interested in doing that. We self-published it on Amazon. We've probably sold, I don't know, maybe a few hundred, maybe 1,000 copies. I don't know, not many at all. But that wasn't the point. It was the experience of us doing it. And it's one of the things I'm kind of most proud of, really. I'm really pleased with the results. Other people seem to like it who've read it, but that's really not why we wrote it. We wrote it for ourselves. And I'm really proud of it. I think the best compliment I ever got from the book was one of my oldest friends told me, she goes, "It's really annoying reading this book. It's like listening to you when you were 18. And I think the fact that I've managed to capture me in that book and sound like I wanted it to sound is great. And it really weirdly, Dan's wife said the same thing to him. She said it's just like listening to you on paper. So it's really weird that 2 of us both managed to get the same comments for a book we wrote together. So that book's called The Cheshire Sect, as in SECT. And we published it under the name Dan Frazer, because he's Dan and Anne Fraser. And so if anyone wants to buy a dark, satirical thriller set in Cheshire, it's called The Cheshire Sect. And it's on there.
Would you do it again? Would you write another book?
Oh, absolutely. We've sort of Dan's flaky and I'm too busy. I'd love to do it again, but I'm planning to write another business. The other book I wrote was which was the Amazon. It was an Amazon #1 bestseller in its category. That was all about property crowdfunding. So unless you're interested in property crowdfunding, it's probably not a great read. But that was a business book to promote The Last Business. So I'm working on a book at the moment, which is about helping founders scale their company to 7 figures. Just really in kind of outline stage at the moment for that, deciding what I'll put in it. But it's going to be largely based around the material I teach as a business success coach. Yeah.
Oh, and huge accomplishment really to write a book. I mean, lots of people talk about writing books, but there's a lot of effort involved, I'm sure. So to actually not just talk about, but to do it is really quite a feat.
Yeah, as I say, it was a very enjoyable process, but because we were only doing occasional evenings, maybe once or twice a month, and then working on it separately at weekends, it did take 3 years. But as I said, it was a very enjoyable process. Well worth doing. It's one of the things I'm most proud of writing that book. I really like it.
Now, tell me about your podcast. What's your podcast about?
Yeah, so
what motivated you to do it too, by the way?
So What motivated me to do it? I suppose partly to kind of help people who want to. I don't know. I mean, my last business, as I say, I didn't feel aligned with it. I became very convinced that the way to be successful in more than just a financial way was to have an enlightened approach to business, whereby you have a definite purpose, a higher purpose than yourself, and your business helps you fulfill that purpose. It should be something you enjoy doing or to be passionate about. And you should be doing it for the good of other people. So I came up with the name, just hit me really, Spiritual Entrepreneur. And so I called the podcast the Spiritual Entrepreneur Blueprint. It's no religious connotations about it. Some people think it has got religious connotations, but it's more about being kind of conscious, aware, enlightened, I suppose, just consciously aware of the laws of the universe, like your law of vibration, law of attraction, and how everything operates by law. So it tends to focus on those types of subjects with some practical business tips from some of the guests I have on the show thrown in. And it's really just there to help business owners and aspiring entrepreneurs create a business that serves them and other people rather than just how to make money.
Yeah. And how long have you been doing that for?
Oh God, not long. About must be a year now, maybe a bit longer. It's hard to. You really have to be disciplined to do that. I used to do it every week, and that was just too big a commitment. So it just comes out every 2 weeks now on kind of YouTube and Spotify and all the other stations.
Yeah. And what's the thing that you enjoy the most about doing your podcast?
Talking to interesting people, actually. I started off just doing kind of talks about various aspects of it, and I still do those, but most of it now is about interviewing other people in the way you're doing with me here. It's just great to see all the different things people have done with their lives and what lessons they can help share with other people. So the meeting of interesting people. I'll say every single guest I've had on has one or two exceptions maybe. That's
my next question. That's my next question I wanted to get out of you is, have you had a bad guest and how did you cope with it?
No.
And what made a bad guest?
Okay. I coped with it fine because it's perfectly pleasant, but they were quite clearly just solely focused on promoting their product rather than bringing anything of real value to the conversation. And I just thought, okay, fine. And he's a marketing person, and who, give me his credit, does have a product that could be very useful to lots of businesses as they're trying to grow. But it just really was a pure promotion for his product rather than talking about any wider lessons.
And have you had anyone that you've interviewed that you thought, I actually just don't really like this person, but I'm talking to them?
No, not at all. No, I say one of my lessons is I tend to look for the good. I tend to look for the good in everyone, and that has been my downfall to some degrees. For instance, that person I told you about, who I lent £10,000 to, and basically created a business for us to run. My wife never liked him. I was friendly with him, but she said it was always something off about him. But I always see the good in people, and it means I have been let down badly a few times by people in various situations. But I'm not going to stop doing that, because once you start to become cynical about people, I think it's not a great way to view the world.
No, that isn't either. Just maybe, just a nice, comfortable balance somewhere in between. That
would be nice. That would be nice if I was a little more cautious with people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, I mean, for me, I think, podcasts, the thing I love about it the most is the chance to meet people you'd never otherwise meet. Like, take you, for instance. If it wasn't for this, I would not meet you. I mean, we do go to England sometimes, but the chance of me ever meeting, not going to happen. And so it's an amazing way that you can meet these people from all around the world and hear some really interesting stories, make some connections where, who knows what could happen through them. So I think technology, being able to communicate through Zoom like we do, or the other, equivalent platforms,
It's amazing.
It's just brought us so much closer together and gives you an opportunity to learn so much more from so many more people. So I just, like you, I just love meeting the people and hearing these stories and having a good chat about some interesting things.
Yeah, no, I really do enjoy it. I mean, yesterday I talked to a guy who is from Canada. So again, it's just Zoom's incredible. He helps people do presentations and talks, and he had a very interesting background. He was going to be a management consultant, but he'd gone into these in Canada. They have these kind of presentation sports when he was in school. So he used to do, used to be big competitions, interstate competitions and stuff, doing presentations, and he decided he had a real passion for that. Now he teaches other people to do it. He's a very interesting guy. I've met people from Australia, Taiwan, New Zealand, like yourself, all over the world. So it's a great medium for meeting people.
It is. And the fact that you've done it for over a year, I mean, that needs to be acknowledged too, because I was actually talking to one of my guests and I was talking about the stats on it, and it's massive, the amount of people that start podcasts, but they don't carry on with them, so to actually still be doing one after a year is actually quite an achievement as well.
Well, I have a social media company who kick my butt if I don't produce the episodes for them. So they tell me when I'm going to run out, and I have to get my act together and do a few more in quick succession. But yeah, I think that again, that's one of the keys to success in any sphere is consistency. I mean, when I started doing the podcast, I knew it would take at least a year to build any sort of traction, and it is slow. I don't have anywhere near the number of listeners I would like, but the numbers are slowly growing. And said the bonus is I get, I much prefer doing the interviews and meeting people, because I really get something out of that rather than just doing lessons, or whatever you might call it, by myself about various aspects of business or mindset. It's much more enjoyable to interview people.
Yeah. And I do think that, this whole thing of enjoying what you do is so important. If you don't really enjoy what you're doing, then it's a struggle. But if you love what you're doing, like say if you love podcasting, you actually don't really care about, well, I can't speak for everyone, but you may well not even care about how many listeners. You just have a great time anyway. Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, I hope that people that listen to my podcast get a lot of value out of it. But regardless, I'm getting a lot out of it. So I'm happy.
Exactly. So that me writing the book, I wasn't interested in finding a publisher and going through that trauma and then going out and marketing it. All I wanted to do was write the book. It was a great experience. And if you do, it's a great lesson there, because if you do something because you love doing it, then it doesn't matter what happens.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And look, as you said before, we don't know how many grains of sand are in that hourglass. So we're just got to make the most of it and enjoying life. You've got to try and enjoy every moment as much as you can.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the podcast. I really appreciate it. I have one final question for you. It's not a trick question, but I think I know the answer. But are you a bit of a reader? And if so, would you be willing to stay on for a short interview where I do what we call read to succeed?
I am a very big reader, voracious. Not as much as my wife. She reads 2 or 3 books a week.
Wow.
But I'm normally reading 4 or 5 books at any one time. So yeah, I'm very happy to talk about books. Love talking about books.
All right. Okay. Well, we'll wrap this interview up now. But for people listening, we're going to come back very shortly for our second podcast, which is Read to Succeed. So anyway, for the meantime, Frazer, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Wouldn't have got to meet you any other way. And I feel very much attuned with a lot of things that you've said and experiences you've had too. So you're not on your own. And I'm sure we're all richer for the experiences that we've had.
It's very kind of you to say so. Thank you, Paul.